Hello, this is Uncle Russ coming to you again from the basement of my brother, Major Tom. We're going to be talking about some comic books we have for sale on eBay at Lock 22 Sellers. You'll find a link in the description below. Be sure to check us out. Going to talk a little bit more about some comic book collections collected editions that I have, and hopefully you'll find something that you enjoy. All right, we're going to start off with some 90s goodness from Marvel Comics. Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 355. Part of the Round Robin Revenge of the Sidekicks story arc. This one has guest appearances by Punisher, Night Thrasher, Moon Knight, and Nova. Written by Al Milgrom with artwork by Mark Bagley and Randy Emberlin. And cover art by Mark Bagley and Klaus Janson. This is a good example of Spider-Man in the early 90s. Very good artwork, good story. This one is a bargain, can be yours today for $5.99. Next up, The Avengers, issue number 266. Going back to 1986, the second Secret Wars miniseries. This is an epilogue to that series, and it features guest appearances by Silver Surfer, and the main focus of this one is Owen Reese, better known as Molecule Man, who through the course of Secret Wars became not only one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, but one of the most interesting. This is written by Roger Stern, with art by the great John Buscema, and inks by the incomparable Tom Palmer. This one is 32 pages with no ads, so it's a little bit longer than your normal Avengers story. And if you want to collect all of the Secret Wars, this is one you need to have in your collection. It's a bargain today at $5.99. Next up, something from the Epic line, which was a subsidiary line published by Marvel Comics. This is one of the first titles in that line, Coyote, 1983. The difference between Marvel and the Epic line was that these characters and concepts remained the property of the creators and were just published by Marvel. This is written and created by Steve Englehart with very interesting artwork and colors by Steve Leialoha. This was a very bizarre, interesting series. Give you a look at the wraparound artwork there on the cover. Ran for 16 issues, and it was reprinted in 5 different trade paperback volumes, which are long out of print. This is a good start to a very interesting and unusual series. It's a bargain today. Coyote number 1, $3.99. And highlighting the work of the incomparable Walter Simonson. This is from his run on the Fantastic Four. Walter Simonson was the writer and artist and cover artist for this one. This is one of my favorite eras of the Fantastic Four by one of their best creative minds. This is a good example. You can see there on the cover. There they are in Rosebud 2, along with Iron Man and the Mighty Thor. This is of steel, only $2.99, and it's yours. And if you follow the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well as the Marvel comic books, you know that in recent years there's been a lot of emphasis upon the cosmic aspects and cosmic concepts and characters of the Marvel Universe. This is an early entry in that series, going all the way back to 1979. Marvel Spotlight Volume 2, Number 1, featuring Captain Marvel, better known as Marvel, also featuring Drax. This is classic 1970s science fiction goodness, written by Doug Bench, with pencils by Pat Broderick and inks by Bruce Patterson. This is one of the most fascinating characters and will be very important in the continuing saga unfolding in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 1979, Marvel Spotlight Volume 2, Number 1, $6.99. All right, January 1984, the infamous Assistant Editors Month at Marvel Comics, where every single one of their titles, for the most part, had something a little bit unusual, a little bit weird going on. This is the Spectacular Spider-Man issue number 86, with a cover and much of the interior art by humor comic book artist Fred Hembeck, whom you may remember from such hilarious series as Fred Hembeck Destroys the Marvel Universe. This also is written by Bill Mantlo, also has interior art by Al Milgrom, and the great Silver Age master, Jim Mooney. This is a very unusual, bizarre, offbeat Spider-Man comic book. $4.99. And going back to the legendary run on the Uncanny X-Men written by Chris Claremont, here we have issue number 204, going back to 1986. Story, Whatever Happened to Nightcrawler? Nightcrawler being the featured character here. Pencils by June Brigman, and inks by a young guy who's become quite famous since then, Will Portacio. This was only his second time drawing the X-Men. And we have a beautiful cover here by June Brigman and Terry Austin. This is a very well written, very beautifully drawn X-Men book. It can be yours today for $4.99. All right, I'd like to talk to you about some of the collected editions that I've recently acquired for my personal collection. These books are not for sale, not at this point in time. One of the benefits to cultivating a good relationship with the local comic book shop is that sometimes you'll find nice little surprises in your pull list. The guy that runs the comic book shop that I do my shopping at, when this came in, he knew right away that this is something that I would love. This is Fantagraphics Press, who is one of the best publishers of avant-garde and underground comic books. This is the Book of Mr. Natural, Profane Tales of that Old Mystic Madcap by Robert Crumb. Robert Crumb, excellent artist and writer, very controversial. Highly recommend this. If you enjoy offbeat underground humor, if you are triggered by cuss words and by nudity, I'd recommend that you stay away from Robert Crumb. It's very, very much of its time, and the style of artwork really set the standard for underground comic books. And Fantagraphics Books is a publisher that keeps this kind of stuff in print for us to enjoy year after year. I highly recommend Robert Crumb. Like I said, if you're not easily triggered by material that's designed to be deliberately offensive. One of the best books that I recently found, it wasn't even on my radar, but like I said, you cultivate a good relationship with your local comic shop owner, and sometimes you'll find things like this that show up, and it's a nice surprise that I was glad to be able to buy. Also, I'd like to mention EC Comics, a very important publisher in the 1950s. As many of you know, that horror and crime comics became quite controversial in the 1950s. There was even congressional hearings about comic books causing juvenile delinquency. These comic books were very well written and drawn by EC, very lurid, very graphic, and by 1956, it was all over. That's when the Comics Code Authority came about, and comic books were changed. They survived as an industry, which they might not have, but these are the reprints of the EC line. Here's an example of The Haunt of Fear. I also have a volume of Tales of the Crypt. I just love that artwork and that very creepy, sort of almost a rotten, fetid, macabre vibe that these put out. William Gaines was the publisher of EC Comics. The sole survivor of their line is Mad Magazine, which is still in print to this day. He published Mad Magazine for decades after the comic books folded. But Dark Horse Publisher is now releasing these in paperback. They're worth checking out. Each one contains 6 back issues, complete. A lot of the greatest artists, writers in comic book history will be found within these pages, and I highly recommend anything that's a reprint of EC comic books. Hard to believe that they started out with picture stories from the Bible, and it ended up with some of the most gruesome and violent crime and horror comics ever made. Hopefully you found something that you like today. If you'd like to purchase any of these books, check for the links in the description below. There'll be more books for sale every week. Lot 22 sellers on eBay. Lot 22. Have a good day. Luck.